Josh Tolley. Okay, Josh is coming on. All right. I don't know Josh, but do you? I guess you do, right?
Well, I imagine this is him calling in on the line right now. Yep, that's Josh.
Great. All right, this is Josh Tolley.
Yes.
Josh, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
We doing all right, buddy?
Hey,
Good. $482,000.
we're all getting there.
And
How do I
Josh,
get the video up?
Josh, can we get you to write the check for the rest of it?
I'll work on that. How's that?
All right. That works for me, buddy.
There he is.
Hey, there we are.
Much better, much better. It's nice when you can see who you're talking to.
Exactly. So $482,000. What did we start out at? 90, right?
When I first saw it, yeah, that's where it was. It was right at 390 when I came on.
Oh, absolutely. And when we think about where we are now and where we started, it's just been an amazing run. I mean, think about it. They told us on day one, oh, he's unelectable, it's never going to work. Here we are. There's two people left running for the nomination, and Ron Paul's one of them. So all the media is way behind. The rest of us knew it. And we knew that passion and that desire for freedom and liberty has now returned. And the media just they weren't quick enough.
You know, there's nothing better than proving the media wrong here. They've been wrong from the beginning. I remember when Newt Gingrich said, "I will be the Republican nominee." You remember him saying that? And look at who's left, Paul. And they said he wouldn't even be here. He's not even going to make it out the starting gate. And he is here. And he's doing the right thing. He's not spending money wastefully. He's going, let's concentrate on where we can get the most bang for the buck. Which is, by the way, a great example for our government. Wouldn't you think that'd be a great thing for them to do, get the most bang for the buck and spend it the right way instead of just any and every way?
Well, exactly. I mean, Newt's going to be in debt until the next presidential election cycle. So here's a guy who told us that he could run the country in the right direction, and he'll be in debt until my grandkids graduate. So the important thing is to make sure you're voting for the right person. I'm getting a terrible delay, so I apologize for that. You know, one of the things I want to address, though, is this movement within the Paul movement. And that's this confusion, you know, what do we do or who's to believe, and is there a breakdown in the campaign? Let me tell you something. It doesn't matter. The reason it doesn't matter is because it wasn't political strategy from a brilliant campaign that got the Paul campaign to where it's at. It's you who got the Paul campaign to where it's at. So it's one of those situations where regardless of what's really happening, you are the ones that carry the ball. It's like a football game. If somebody drops the ball, we don't all huddle around real quick and try to figure out who it is. Somebody just picks it up and runs with it. And as long as there's still a breath left in us, and as long as August is still coming at us, there's always an opportunity for victory. So you just keep pushing, you keep donating, you keep telling your friends, you bring everybody you can down to Tampa, because the Fall Festival is going to be happening right before the RNC. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Well, we'll take over the convention for sure, no matter what. I mean, I want to go even if I'm not a delegate. I don't know if you guys plan to.
Well, not only can you go, but there's also an event. It's called Paul Festival. You can go to paulfestival.com. They're expecting 100,000 Paul supporters. Now try to hold a convention when there's 100,000 people chanting for the candidate that they want and pretend not to pay attention to it in mainstream media. It's going to be impossible. So get down there and let your voice be heard.
Absolutely.
And that's what it's about, you know. And what's fascinating, what you said, Josh, is that the media has done everything they can, just like the Republican Party, to totally discount the Paul campaign. And look where we are. I think it's absolutely fabulous where we are today. So instead of people running around being upset that he's redirecting things, I think it's fabulous where we are. And we're the last two. It's only Romney and us. And, you know, I don't know if you know what the delegate counts are. Isn't it somewhere, the actual delegate count is somewhere like 350 to 150, isn't it? 350 for Romney, 150 for...
Yeah, but the thing that we also have on our side is this rule number 38, and 2.5 months before we actually get to August in the first place. So last night I was on a conference call where we talked about this push to convert some of these Romney delegates. There's a lot of people who believe they're Romney delegates who wish they could be a delegate for somebody else, and now there might actually be a possibility for that to happen. So whether it's the delegates that are quote-unquote bound, the delegates that are unofficial or uncommitted, or the delegates that have yet to be assigned in states, there's a whole lot of race left in this stuff.
Tolley, I want to ask you a couple of questions. What are your listeners saying about this? What do you get a feel for when it comes to the pulse of your listeners as it relates to this movement?
Well, I think a lot of people are excited. I think there's a transition that's happening. I think the focus is getting away from a politician and it's moving more towards principle. You know, there's this realization that it doesn't really matter how this campaign comes out because the torch has been lit. This fuel, this breath of freedom has been kindled in the heart of man again. And what's great about this is we've lived in a nation where we've assumed we've been free for so long, we've never had to exercise and live out those freedoms. Now that we're seeing on a daily basis a restriction of those freedoms, people are actually waking up and saying, well, wait a second, I don't want to live in a zoo. I want to be free. So it's almost a blessing and a curse. I mean, granted, nobody likes to lose liberty, nobody likes to lose freedom. But once you realize you're losing it, more and more people stand up and want to fight for it. And I'm starting to see that transition. There's always been the people who believed in Austrian economics or libertarian views, and that's wonderful and that's great. But what we're seeing now are people from the Democrat Party, from the Green Party, from the Republican Party. They're all waking up and saying, wait, we can argue about tax rates later, but if we don't figure out how to get the freedom of America back, what actually makes America America, the argument for tax rates doesn't matter because the nation ceases to exist.
Yeah, well then, can you address the issue? Because I got a whole bunch of questions. I did an interview with Mr. Sinclair, Larry Sinclair, and he asked me a number of questions about what Benton had said. There are a lot of folk talking as though Ron Paul quit because they're taking little snippets of what Benton said. Please address the audience directly because I've said, sometimes you got to take things with a grain of salt, especially coming from MSM. But give us your perspective and what people should take from what was put out by Benton and what they need to be doing in terms of Ron Paul at this point.
Well, what people should take it in terms of what came out from Jesse Benton is absolutely nothing. Don't even listen to it. Why would you ever stop your stride and your drive for freedom and liberty because of one person? Matter of fact, let's just be honest. At 76, 77 years old, if Ron Paul died tomorrow, this movement wouldn't stop. And then that's what the mainstream media is missing. This isn't about Ron Paul. And if there's people within this campaign who still think it's about Ron Paul, then they need to leave. Because what's propelling this campaign is something much bigger. Ron knows that. You know that, and you know that, and everybody on this conference knows this. So what we need to do is to continue this march, continue the message, continue saying, hey, you know what? As long as it's still an option to vote for him, I'm going to vote for him. And if I have to get to Tampa as a delegate and protest if I have to protest, then do what you have to do. But make your voice be heard. Don't give up just because somebody might have spoken out of turn. And let's just be honest about this too. There might be a strategy. There might be a strategy that we don't know about. None of us are on the campaign. So don't pay attention to what they're doing. They didn't bring us to them. We brought them to where they are. And that's vitally important we remember that. We have to remember that we have to play our game. We have been divided for so long between right and left and media and politicians. And it's just like when you play football. They tell you, don't play the opponent's game. Make them play your game. And we're on that precipice. And the mainstream media is freaked out about it, to be honest with you. And that's why there's all this spin. Oh, we quit, or oh, he's in, or whatever. They're trying to change our conversation. They know our conversation doesn't stop in November. It doesn't stop in August. It doesn't stop until the last freedom lover is dead. So we're adapting this belief that I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. And that's an uncontrollable dialogue for them. That freaks them out. So if we continuing on with what we've been doing that got us to this point, and then just expand upon that, and also importantly, we have to focus on things that get us back to that local level. You know, we're not electing a king, we're not electing a dictator. So it's vitally important that if you're a Ron Paul supporter, you also support candidates who are running for county and city and state level who believe in that same sort of mentality. Because at some point, we're going to get pushback from the establishment. And the only thing that buffers us against that are local sheriffs, governors, and local senators saying, whoa, you know what? Not in my town, not in my county, not in my state. So we have to realize where the fight actually is. Don't let them dictate the conversation. Don't let them dictate the game plan. And certainly don't let them distract you over one president when there's hundreds of other elections that are really equally as important. So we have to get involved in the process, not just one person.
You know, you are so right. Okay, I'll say this real. Okay.
I'm sorry, Super Dave, but I've been told that we got Air Freddy coming up here in just a second, and they wanted us to ask Josh one last question. What can people who have maxed out in giving, as far as money goes, what can they be doing at this point?
Well, they can be encouraging other people to give. They can give in another way by getting signs, yard signs, talking to their neighbors, talking to senior citizen assisted living homes, because those people vote too, and you know the Democrats and the other people in the establishment are going after it. They can start living their freedoms. It's wonderful to campaign for freedom every 4 years, but we also need to live out those freedoms. Freedom is like a wrench you keep in the garage. If you don't realize it's gone, you can talk about having it, but somebody could have stole it 6 months ago and you won't notice until you actually need it. So start living out those freedoms as well. Don't just campaign or talk about them. Start living them. Start supporting other people who are living out their freedoms, even if you don't agree with it. Because what we have to realize is a loss of freedom for anybody is a loss of freedom for everybody. So we have to really get behind everything that's involved in this movement, not just the information exchange.
Right.
Super Dave, go ahead. I cut you off. Go ahead, finish your question.
Oh, okay. The last thing I wanted to say is you're right about one thing. This is not just about Ron Paul. It's a movement. And every gutsy politician, and there weren't that many because they were scared of the Republican Party, everyone that endorsed Ron Paul needs the support of all of us. It just isn't about Ron Paul. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, and a side effect of that, Super Dave, is that we're going to get new politicians. There might be somebody watching this right now who's the next Ron Paul. They might say, you know what? When you do stand up for what's right, what's true, and what's just, other people will get behind you. So even what we're doing now is setting the framework. I always tell my listeners that candidates never produce culture.
How?
It's always the culture that produces the candidates. And we are the culture. If we start impacting the culture, then in election cycles to come, we're going to get the candidates that are the fruition of us.
Because we are scaring the royal hell out of them right now, out of the establishment.
Yeah.
And we got to run with that. Not just think that Ron, like you said, Ron Paul dies tomorrow. You know, you just don't give up. It's not about Ron Paul, and that's the most important message that we have to keep going.
Well, and that's why the mainstream media doesn't get it, because for them it is about the candidate of their choice. 4 years ago, it was about Barack Obama. It wasn't about progressive ideas. Before that, it was about George Bush. It wasn't about conservative ideas. So this idea that people are getting behind a principle instead of a party, behind a way of life as opposed to a candidate, that's freaking them out, and they don't know how to report on it. And if they don't know how to report on it, they certainly don't know how to control it. And that's where our advantage right now is. They're trying to tell us that it's about Ron Paul. So we're going to dangle this story in front of your eyes and say, oh, your guy quit, so now you have to too.
It says the quote.
If they don't know us, we ain't going to quit. We're not going anywhere. So the ball's really in our court.
Absolutely right. That's awesome. I mean, that's a great way of putting it, because we just can't stop because the press tells us. The press is doing everything they can, and the Paul movement gets stronger and stronger. Even this little hiccup right here isn't going to change what I'm doing or what you're doing, and I can tell T-Mot's the same way. So, and I actually think it's the Romney people who are trying to agitate this even more to make it sound like we got to get this candidate done today. And I'm not buying it, and I don't think you guys are either.